Good day everyone and welcome to the review of the SimLab P1-X in its 2021 version. I have previously called this rig the gold standard in aluminum profile rigs, so today we're going to take a closer look at it and find out if or why that title is deserved. This review is fairly thorough and there's a lot to cover here, so it'll be a tad longer than my usual reviews. And whether you're in the market for a new aluminum profile rig or just curious about what's out there, this review should have something for you. Time to get yourself a cup of tea, lean back and enjoy. Before we start, a quick disclaimer. I received the P1-X from SimLab free of charge for the purpose of this review. Other than that, I received no compensation and all thoughts and opinions are my own. And as always, if you're looking for a particular section of this review, you'll find timestamps to all chapters in the description below. So let's start at the beginning and think about what makes for a good sim rig. After all, sim rigs come in a lot of different flavors, and nowadays you can get anything from foldable wheel stands to room-sized cages that toss you around like a puppet. So which rig is best for you very much depends on your needs, and there certainly is no single best rig out there. For example, if you're trying to fit a rig into a smaller room or you need to move it around a lot, you might want something small or light. For users of high torque wheelbases and high force brake pedals, the rig's rigidity becomes a primary concern. And if you want to place the rig in your living room, you might not want it to look like you just dragged it out of a scrapyard. A first major distinction in the world of sim rigs can then be made between aluminum profile rigs and anything else, with the P1-X falling in the former category. And these aluminum profile rigs are a pretty homogeneous bunch in terms of their looks and features, so whether or not the P1-X is right for you depends first and foremost on whether or not aluminum profiles are the way to go for you. So before we talk about the P1-X in particular, let's take a look at the advantages and disadvantages of aluminum profile rigs in general. Aluminum profile rigs, also called aluminum extrusion or 80-20 rigs, are typically made from 40 series profiles, a standard for the construction of all kinds of machine frames, enclosures, workbenches, and so on. Since the standard is widely used in industrial applications, these profiles are fairly affordable bulk goods. Standard also means that both the outer dimensions and slot dimensions are identical across all Series 40 profiles, and you can pretty much mix and match as you please. The profiles are mostly put together using standard corner brackets, with most rigs throwing in a few custom pieces such as the wheel deck, pedal mounts and shifter mounts. Generally speaking, there are a number of advantages that aluminum profile rigs have over other kinds. They are highly adjustable, as you can place the wheel, pedals and other important interfaces exactly where you want them, in distance, height and often also angle or even lateral position. Using the 40 series standard also creates a general cross-compatibility between rigs and accessories from various manufacturers. For special wishes, you can also often create your own solution from standard pieces without knowledge of or tools for metalworks. In short, the possibilities to equip and customize your rig are virtually endless. Aluminum profile rigs also tend to be very rigid, although differences occur based on the size of the profiles, strength of the material used, and of course the construction or design of the rig. The cons of aluminum profile rigs are generally their price, weight, assembly time, and aesthetics. The industrial look may not be perceived as perfectly living room friendly, although the black anodization of most rigs these days certainly helps on that front. In terms of weight, the stellar rigidity often comes at the cost of a fairly heavy rig. That's not to say that they are unreasonably heavy in all cases, but the stiffness to weight ratio is often better with custom designed aluminum or steel framing. Assembly usually takes a few hours, which isn't great, but is usually a one and done. And in terms of pricing, the entry point for aluminum profile rigs today appears to be a little under 400 credits, plus shipping, a seat slider and rails, a shifter mount, and whatever else you wish to have on your rig. And that's for the small ones. The larger P1-X class of sim rigs typically sits between 300 and 500 credits above that. Non-aluminum profile rigs often start out quite a bit cheaper, although they too can become quite expensive. Now what's not expensive for you, but priceless to me, is if you subscribe to this channel. So if you're into sim racing, which you probably are, and you're at least somewhat interested in the hardware and technology that goes into it, this is the right place for you. So hit that subscribe button and ring the bell. Next up, we go from aluminum profile rigs in general to, well, let's call it the P1-X formula, the used profile dimensions and general design. We're still not discussing only the P1-X here though, as there are a number of competitors that follow the same formula, and we'll also get to those a little later. With a chassis made from 160 by 40 profiles and uprights of 120 by 40, as well as a total length of about 1.35 m, the P1-X formula defines the largest category of aluminum profile rigs in the mass market today. In short, this design prioritizes and maximizes rigidity, adjustability, and compatibility. So as long as the rig's weight isn't an issue for you, you like the looks and it's within your budget, the P1-X formula will be very hard to beat. No wonder then that a growing number of competitors are by now offering the same general concept with some minor differences here and there. And now we can discuss the P1-X itself, which as a side note is already SimLab's second iteration on this concept after the original P1. It's also subject to some minor tweaks and changes over the years, and as already mentioned, I'm reviewing the 2021 version here. Recapping then, the P1-X is a king-sized black anodized aluminum profile rig with a 160 by 40 chassis, 120 by 40 uprights, and a good number of custom hardware pieces to put it all together. It's 1.35 m long, has a width of 68 cm for the core frame, and it's made from very solid profiles. And solid here means both rigid and heavy. According to the SimLab website, the rig itself without a seat or accessories should come in at a whopping 55 kilochunks. Add to that not just the seat, but also a seat slider, seat brackets, preferably a direct drive wheelbase and an all-metal pedal set, plus a few other accessories, and that number grows to exactly an even higher number. You might call it the elephant in the room. So let's discuss that. Weight in a sim rig can actually be a bit of a double-edged sword. Basic physics tells us that in order to accelerate a larger mass, you need a greater force, and as a consequence, a heavier rig will handle strong force feedback with more ease, and the force feedback vibrations won't travel as far through the chassis. So for better or worse, you won't feel as much of the force feedback in your feet or in your seat as you would with a lighter rig. If you've ever used a strong wheel on a very light rig, you may have noticed that you can feel the wheels rattle, for example from going over rumble strips, throughout the chassis, filling in somewhat for the lack of transducers and giving you a more immersive feel. In the P1-X though, you don't feel as much of that rattle anywhere other than in your hands. One could argue that it's less immersive, but once you install, say, one transducer at each corner of the chassis, the vibrations coming from it should feel more precise as there won't be as much crosstalk between the left and right and the front and rear of the rig. The weight also means that it's not easily moved around, and the P1-X may pose a bit of a challenge to motion systems, in that it will make everything move a little slower and feel a little more sluggish. It may still feel good, but it will never be as fast as with a lighter rig. Since motion systems are fairly expensive though, I think chances are most of you won't be planning to get one anyway, and you should be able to enjoy the P1-X's solid feel with no regrets. So let's talk about compatibility next. First up, seats. The P1-X can be equipped with virtually any seat. The most common form in sim rigs would be side-mounted bucket seats, which are installed using seat brackets. But also bottom-mounted seats can be installed using corner brackets to mount them to the respective profiles. And of course, in both cases you can put a seat slider underneath for quick adjustments of the seating position. Mind though that the P1-X doesn't come with seat sliders or seat brackets, so don't forget about them when you place your order. The P1-X should also be able to mount pretty much any currently available steering wheel, but be sure to choose the right wheel mount. There's a wheel deck for bottom-mounted wheelbases, like those from Logitech, Thrustmaster, Fanatec and AccuForce. Then there's the Fanatec Podium side mount for the Fanatec direct drive wheelbases. And finally there's a front mounting bracket for most other direct drive wheelbases out there. That's the Small Midge, Big Midge, Simicube 2, Bodnar and so on. When it comes to pedals, sets that need to be mounted from the bottom, like those from Thrustmaster and Fanatec, will mount to the pedal tray using corner brackets, while pedal sets bolted in from the top can be mounted directly onto the profiles. SimLab also offers a pedal slider base plate that allows you to install a seat slider under your pedals for quick and easy adjustments. I have this base plate installed in my rig, and it'll get its own review video in the upcoming weeks. It's compatible with Thrustmaster, Fanatec and Heusinkveld pedals, and a special version of the tray for HPP pedals is also available. Shifters and handbrakes are mounted to the rig's side arm. As a general rule of thumb, since it's aluminum extrusion, any combination of shifters and handbrakes can be mounted to it, so long as you're willing to put some thought into it and possibly buy a little bit of extra material. As far as out-of-the-box solutions, SimLab offers a dedicated mount for the Fanatec Club Sport shifter, as well as a universal mount for other shifters and handbrakes. According to SimLab, the latter is compatible with the Fanatec Club Sport shifter and handbrake, the Thrustmaster TSS handbrake and TH80 shifter, as well as the Huizinga handbrake. And it too will get its own little review on this channel in the upcoming weeks. Aside from mounting solutions for wheels, pedals, shifters and handbrakes, there's also an impressive list of available accessories. A heel rest, a keyboard tray, button box holders, monitor mounts, a mousepad, feet, caster wheels, an inverted pedal mount, ButtKicker mounting plates, cable binders, cup holders, a floor, a shelf, a footrest, a headphone holder, speaker mounts, a racing harness, even a Formula style seat and a lot more. And remember, if there's anything you want that SimLab doesn't offer, you can still buy it from other brands and mount it to your rig. Of course, this is a two-way street, and you can also mount most or all of the SimLab accessories to your non-SimLab aluminum profile rig. By the way, what I have to review here is the P1-X with the Fanatec podium wheel mount, a seat slider, a seat bracket, the pedal slider base plate and heel rest, the new universal shifter mount, the integrated monitor mount and the adjustable sim feed. In order to keep it concise though, this video will be focused on the main rig itself, and as already alluded to, I'll have short individual review videos for each of the accessory pieces going up in the following weeks. You'll find links to all of these videos in the description below. Let me begin this section by saying that most of the P1-X's hardware is of very high quality. This includes the profiles themselves, the laser-cut aluminum pieces, and most of the smaller bits and pieces. The T-nuts, for example, with their ball and coil spring mechanism, look and feel very solid and of higher quality than the leaf spring type that some of the competitors use. Unfortunately, the corner brackets in the 2021 version are a lightweight all-black kind that doesn't feel quite as solid as the darkish grey pieces from previous years. I was told that this change was made for aesthetic reasons, as customers were asking for an all-black sim rig. And while this all-black look is admittedly growing on me, the connectors unfortunately don't hold on to the plastic covers very well. The caps sit pretty loosely in their ducts and they tend to fall off very easily. You can remedy this to a degree by wrapping the plastic pins in duct tape like you see here, but that still doesn't stop me from pulling this one cap under the seat off just about every other time I get out of the rig. Personally, I certainly prefer the previously used corner brackets, which not just had a higher quality feel to them, but also did a much better job of holding onto their heads. In terms of the stability and rigidity of the rig though, there's luckily no difference between the two kinds. Another minor point of criticism would be that the powder coating on the custom aluminum pieces isn't quite perfect. In my case, they came shipped with the coating already chipped off in a few places, although these spots are mostly hidden now that it's all mounted. Not a big deal then overall, but getting them without any chips would certainly be a nice touch. It should be noted though that after assembly and setup, you will almost inevitably have a few scratches and marks on your rig that are probably worse than the chips in the powder coating. The fairly soft aluminum in the custom pieces likes to remember previous positions of the bolts, and the anodization of the profiles is easy to scratch up. This is very normal though, and will be the case with any black aluminum profile rig, so I can't really fault SimLab for it. Speaking of the profiles though, looking at the cross-section reveals where the P1-X gets its weight. There's a lot more material in the profiles that SimLab uses than in those used by at least some of the competitors. Again, I'll leave it up to you whether you think that's a good thing or not. Personally, I kinda like the heavier profiles, at least so long as there's no motion system involved. The assembly of the P1-X is no different from other aluminum profile rigs, so I won't spend too much time on this here. It took me about 6 hours to build and set up the main rig without most of the accessories, which is very similar to my previous build of an aluminum profile rig. If you want to know anything and everything there is to know about putting a P1-X together, Barry of the Sim Racing Garage has made somewhat of a feature-length film that just covers it all. I've linked it in the description below, so if that's your kind of thing, feel free to check it out. One of the most important aspects of any sim rig is how much it flexes under the stresses put onto it while driving. In particular the wheel and pedal mount, but also the shifter mount and the chassis itself will typically flex to some extent, so let's have a look at how the P1-X fares in this regard. We start out with a pedal mount here, and in my case there are 3 potential sources of flex. The pedal mount that comes with a P1-X, consisting of 2 profiles sandwiched between 2 aluminum plates, which are in turn sandwiched between the main beams of the chassis. On top of that there is a Sparker seat slider, and then the pedal slider base plate on top of that. I'm testing this combo with a set of Haye sprint pedals where the brake force is set to the maximum of 65 kilograms. So what do we see here? First, there is absolutely no flex in the pedal mount at the bottom of the assembly. Right above that, we see a very minor amount of flex in the Sparker seat slider, and then the base plate itself is also arching up just a little. This is a very good result, as the flex overall is minimal and not really noticeable to me while driving. However, if you were to insist on a true zero flex solution, you can always mount your pedals directly to the profiles underneath. To me though, having the option of adjusting the pedal position on the fly is just way too convenient, but more on this in the separate review of the pedal slider base plate. For the wheel mount and force feedback test, I'm using my Fanatec DD1 mounted using SimLab's Fanatec Podium wheel mount. In this synthetic test where I push and pull on the wheel rim, you can see some flex occurring in the wheel mount and possibly a tiny bit in the uprights as well. This again is a very good result, as I'm using rather excessive amounts of force in the direction orthogonal to the wheel torque. So let's have a look at a driving scenario. I set the DD1 to 100% force feedback, giving me peaks around 20 Nm, and I took a few laps in a GT3 car around Oulton Park. The video analysis only shows a tiny bit of horizontal movement in the uprights. Since this isn't really noticeable while driving, it's another very good result. The monitor mount that you can see in most of the shots of my P1-X may or may not improve the stability in the wheel mount further, but it's honestly hard to make an exact determination here. After all, the flex is already essentially imperceptible to begin with. One way or the other, the wheel mount is very solid. Getting to the shifter mount then, I'm using SimLab's new universal shifter mount, which mounts on top of the sidearm profile. I'm testing it in the highest mounting position and with a top plate turned by 90 degrees. This setting is my preferred one for the TH8A shifter, and it's also the one with the biggest leverage over the sidearm. Under normal driving, there is hardly any flex visible at all, both in the universal shifter mount and in the sidearm. Once you start banging in the gears really hard, the shifter itself will flex more than the mount, and you'll see a little bit of lateral movement in the P1-X's sidearm. However, just like with a wheel mount, the movement is only really visible during stress tests, and you most likely won't feel any of it haptically. The shifter feels pretty much like it's mounted to a rock. All things considered then, the P1-X gets full points for rigidity. With next to no noticeable flex in any driving situation, even with rather extreme settings, it's as stiff as you could ever wish for, and may just be the sturdiest rig I've tried so far. Finally, I'd like to discuss the situation with competitor products. As mentioned earlier, there are quite a few rigs on the market that follow the P1-X formula. In the aluminum profile market, this may be unavoidable and is certainly a testament to the quality and success of this design. So in what ways do the competitor products differ from the P1-X? For one, there's the profiles themselves. There are different types with different looking cross sections and different weight per unit length. From what I can tell, Pro Simrix profiles, for example, appear to be of the same kind as SimLab's. TrakRacer uses a slightly different kind, which may just be a touch lighter from the looks of it, while GT Omega uses a particularly lightweight construction. Then there's the quality of the used standard hardware, like corner brackets, T-nuts and bolts. For instance, GT Omega and TrakRacer are using the leaf spring T-nuts, while SimLab uses the previously mentioned higher quality ball and coil spring T-nuts. And finally, the laser-cut aluminum pieces typically look a bit different from company to company and come in varying material strengths. You will see the differences in wheel decks, pedal mounts and shifter mounts, as well as the way the uprights and sidearms are mounted. As far as SimLab is concerned, their choices for material and hardware almost always prioritize quality and rigidity over cost and weight savings. Nonetheless, there may still be reasons to go with one of the competitor products. Some are significantly lighter than the P1-X, some offer different colors and styling, some undercut its price, in particular once you take shipping costs into account, and some may stand out in another way. So I'd say it's definitely worth taking a look at other offerings, even if on quality alone the P1-X is very hard to beat. Before we get to the final verdict, let's recap and make a list of the pros and cons of the P1-X. On the pro side, we have perfect adjustability, a huge selection of accessories, both from SimLab and other companies. It's compatible with just about any wheelbase, pedal set, shifter and handbrake on the market. The used hardware is of very high quality, and there is no perceivable flex. The P1-X is just an extremely solid rig. Now, some points that can go either way. First off, the price. I think the base price of around 700 credits for the P1-X is absolutely fair, but depending on where you live, shipping costs can add quite a bit on top of that. Then it's very heavy, which can be good or bad depending on how you use it. And there's the looks. Some will love the all-black appeal, others might find the industrial-looking aluminum profiles to be more functional than aesthetically pleasing. And finally, there are a couple of minor points of criticism. The assembly can be cumbersome. Obviously, this is the case for all aluminum profile rigs, and there's not much that SimLab can do about that. I'm still listing it as there are non-aluminum profile rigs competing with the P1-X that may be much easier and quicker to assemble. Then, on my unit, some of the powder-coated parts came with minor chips in the finish, and the corner brackets are slightly lower quality than in previous years, with this version not doing a good job of holding on to the plastic covers. And that's really all I could come up with in terms of criticism. Overall, the P1-X is a really impressive rig. If you don't mind the weight and putting in a few hours to build it and set it up, it will be very difficult to find a rig that really is better than the P1-X. In my opinion then, it really is the gold standard in aluminum profile rigs and sets a benchmark for others to beat. Still, since there are a lot of very similar rigs out there, I recommend that you take a look at those as well before you pull the trigger. I posted a few links to reviews in the description, so be sure to also check those out. But what do you think of the P1-X? Do you prefer one of the competitors? Head down to the comments section and let me know. Also, if I left any of your questions about the P1-X unanswered, let me know and I'll do my best to get back to you. Finally, if you liked this video, make sure to let YouTube know, subscribe to the channel and ring the bell. If you want to further support this channel and you're looking for some new sim racing hardware, please consider buying via the affiliate links in the description below. With all of that said, I hope you're having a great day, be safe, and I'll see you in the next one.